welcome to the Over and Back Classic NBA podcast. I am Jason, and with me as usual is Rich. Hello, Rich.
What is going on?
Not a whole lot. We're here at the end of our series on 50-point games. We did it.
We hardly knew you. Yeah. Poor series. No, it was a good series. It was a fun series. No, yeah, it's over. It's all done. It's all over. This is the last Over and Back podcast for sure, right?
Well, on the subject, yes.
You know. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Right.
When you said we were done, I thought you meant. Right. I see what I get what you meant now. Okay, good.
Sense,
I was like, oh,
yeah.
all right. Well,
that would have been not a nice way to tell you. I
thought it was a little crude, but yeah, that's all right. So that's good.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's a relief because I was like, I like doing this show and I like talking to you. But good.
Well,
okay, so we will be back. This is just the end of this series. Not the series, the Over and Back podcast series, the end of this particular 50-point game series. Okay, I feel a lot better now.
Yeah. So we have been going through different eras and looking at the number of 50-point games, diving into some of the key players, the interesting facts. You know, if you've been listening to it, you know what we've been doing. And if you haven't been listening to it, then you should go back and listen to the previous episodes because it'll make more sense than if you get into this one. Although, if you want to start here, you know, who am I to say? It's pretty simple. We're just talking about 50-point games as they happen and the key players. So really, you don't take my advice. Just listen to whatever order you want to. We don't really care.
Right, but listen to them all because that would be very nice. And then give us a review on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, wherever, and let people know that you listen to us. And only good reviews too, because fragile Eagles cannot handle negative reviews.
Yeah. At least download them. If you don't listen to them, I mean, I would like you to listen to them, but if you don't have time, just download them and the rating. That's really what we care about, the numbers.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Right. So we're soulless. We're soulless.
We are
entities that just want gratification. So that's all we need.
We do. We like our gratification, and who doesn't? You know, everyone likes gratification. So anyway, speaking of gratification, the year 2000. That is where we go because the year 1999 did not have any 50-point games. It was the first season since 1957 without a 50-point game. In fact, the highest point total that year was 46. Three players did it.
Well, that year, confirming that 1999 is the lamest year in NBA history. Is that a hot take? I hate that year. That year's just weird. I don't like it.
Yeah, our friend Todd Spear will defend the 1999 season just with pointing out that some really interesting stuff did happen in that year. That's the Jason Williams year. You know, there's some interesting teams that year. The Blazers were interesting. The Suns were interesting. So but there definitely was a lot of, compressed basketball in a short amount of time, some out of shape stuff. I kind of see both sides of it, but it definitely, it's definitely an odd year in history, obviously being the lockout year, for those who don't know that immediately. But the players who had 46 were Grant Hill, Allen Iverson, and Antonio McDyess. And again, the first season.
See, that's the lamest year ever. If Antonio McDyess is like one of your leading scorers,
well, he was.
Antonio McDyess was great at that time.
Yeah.
No, and Jason Williams. I will now take back my 1999 being the lamest year because it was the year that Jason Williams emerged as everything that he was, and that's when he was like in peak. Like, I don't care if I'm going to have like 15 turnovers a game.
Right.
I'm going to do this behind the back pass, and I appreciate that. So I take it back. There's probably a lamer year. Let's just throw out. I don't know. I'm trying to think of a lamer year.
We'll figure it out.
1965. All right, there you go.
Right,
I don't know. 1965 was not lame at all. I don't know. I'm just throwing. No. I just want to deflect off of 1999. So.
All right, fair enough. So yes, the first time since 1957 that there had been a season without a 50-point game, and in fact, in 1999 there were 725 games total without a 50-point. I believe regular season games, not counting the playoffs, and from 54 to 57 combined had 864 games without a 50-point game. So obviously similar amount of games there, a larger span in those 4 seasons, but just kind of gives you some context as to how long it really was. And the gap was actually, it wasn't until January 16th, 2000 that there was a 50-point game. So we went from April 7th, 98 to January 2000. So that's, like 21 months there that we didn't have one. So quite a long time. And the man who broke the streaks, our old friend, Uncle Cliffy.
Yes, Over and Back podcast aficionado.
Yeah.
One of our guy who definitely listens to every single episode, really enjoys it a lot. Cliff Robinson,
yeah,
is our first one, and he sets the record for the oldest to score 50 for the first time, a record that would last until 2010, and we discussed that 2010 break. Andre Miller, who breaks that record. We talked about him in our most unlikely 50-point games in this very series. So again, a reason why to go back and listen to the rest of the series.
Right.
But Uncle Cliffy does it. Gets right 50 on the dot, and pretty fun for him to get it at this point in kind of his advanced age. And he's a son at this point too, we should say as well. I know it's kind of tough because Cliff Robinson, he went to a lot of places, but he was a son at this time.
Yeah, that's right. He was a son, and he was 33 at this point. Had just turned 33. Yes, and as I alluded to before, 21 months and 9 days is the longest gap since the 3-season drought in the 1950s. So, and then also in that year, in the year 2000, there were 5 games total that year of 50 points. Vince Carter had the very first in Raptors history. So, of course, the Raptors notable in, as we've recorded this, they've just recently won the NBA championship. So, breaking some ground there back when the Raptors were non-champions. And Vince Carter was the thing they had. So yes.
Yeah, unfortunately, there was a long time where Vince Carter scoring 50 points was probably the most profound thing that franchise ever had. That is now gone forever because obviously a title is way more important than that. So good for them, and I think we willed them into the championship more than anything because we did that podcast about we were saying, hey, they're in the finals, let's talk about it, and then they win. So I mean, I don't think it's a total accident. So.
Yeah, no, definitely we deserve the majority of the credit, if not all the credit for that. I believe really
at least a ring between us. We'll share the ring. We'll find a way to do a joint relationship with this thing, but just one ring between us would be nice.
We can do it. We're not like I don't know, Frodo. Who's the
if it's a Lord of the Ring reference, I don't know. I've never seen any of the movies or read any of the books. So
all right, fair enough.
Yes, Frodo. We'll go with that.
Yes, there's somebody who like really wants the ring and he can't it's not Gandalf. I don't know. I'm not a big Lord of the Rings guy either. So somebody's yelling at their podcast right now.
Yes, somebody is very upset, and I'm sorry.
I'm sorry that I upset you, but I don't know. Allen Iverson had also had a 50-point game this season. It was his first since 1997. So he's only 24 years old at that point. So also Karl Malone had the 30th in playoff history. It was the last of his career. He also set a record for the oldest player ever to do so at 36 years, 273 days. This was broken 2 years later by Michael Jordan, although Karl Malone still holds the playoff mark. This was also the most recent 50-point game for the Jazz. They've not had one since the year 2000 in their franchise. And he also joins the club of players to do so 5 or more times in their careers.
Yeah, good for Karl there. And obviously, one of the NBA's, best scorers of all time. It's second on the all-time list there. But, pretty interesting to see him do it. His last 50-point game here, of course, in the 2000s. But he's still, even though he's older, I mean, arguably some of his more productive years come in these last, handful of years of his dominance or in the last few years of his Jazz run, particularly 99 and 2000, which are kind of lost years in Jazz history because, they don't go to the finals those years, so people maybe don't look at them nearly as much as they should. But Karl Malone was he was a force these few years here, but obviously success on the court wasn't as big as it was the few years prior, so these years kind of get a little bit lost in Jazz history.
Yes, yeah, he was a weirdo too, so people don't like to talk about him that much. But absolutely, he was pretty incredible as a player, and some good times. The highlight of this season, though, going back to March 6th of 2000, is Shaquille O'Neal had 61 points and 23 rebounds against the LA Clippers, playing for the Lakers. This was actually the last of 3 total 50-plus games of his career, which may be a little bit of a surprise to many of us since, of course, he has the reputation of being the most dominant ever. It was the first 50-20 game in the NBA since 1982, which was done by Moses Malone. The first 60-20 game in the NBA since 1969, which was by Wilt Chamberlain. Only George Mikan and Elgin Baylor have done it otherwise. This was also Shaquille O'Neal's 28th birthday, which is fun times. We got some interesting facts about really looking more about the idea about, as we said, Shaq has called himself and others have called him the most dominant ever. But really, how dominant was Shaq really?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and we looked at some numbers here and some kind of pros and cons for him. Like, off the top, before we kind of get into the nuts and bolts of it and kind of some of the stats, Shaq is an interesting case because there was a time where, and a few years in the NBA, and I remember, we kind of all lived through, as most people listening to this probably lived through it or watched it in real time, where Shaq was like unguardable, like an unbelievable force down low, a guy who in the playoffs seemed to step up his game even more, and just like nobody had an answer for him, nobody could guard him, nobody could do anything. But for him to say and for the kind of the reputation to be the most dominant ever is kind of tricky. I mean, given what we've talked about in this podcast with 50-point games and what we've talked about on the history of this entire podcast, talking of other great players of other great times, does Shaq stand out as more dominant than a Wilt Chamberlain? Does he stand out as more dominant than someone like a Bill Russell? Does he stand out more dominant than Michael Jordan's or any of those sort of guys, or even to these days LeBron James? I don't know. It's kind of an interesting take on, and there was a few years where it felt like he was unguardable, but there's not many of those years. You know what I mean? Like, to me, honestly, I think of like 1999 to like 2002 of Shaq just being like this just unstoppable force. But then you look at it, and yeah, maybe the points don't show that all the way. Maybe some of the numbers don't kind of show that all the way. So it's really interesting, and it's an odd case there, but yeah, it's kind of gained a reputation of its own of him being this like uber amazing dominant player, and I don't know if that's quite reflected in the facts or the stats all that much either.
Yeah, well, if you look at the pros for his case, he did lead the league in field goal percentage 10 times, which is kind of an interesting thing I would not have necessarily thought about. I mean, obviously he gets close to the basket, had a lot of dunks, was good around the basket, and again, demonstration of his just being physically imposing. Once he gets down there, he just plows through guys and beats them and scores. Was first in PR in the league 5 times, top 3 in the league 11 times. So I think that's something in his favor. Top 3 in points per game 8 times. Was first only twice. Only twice, I'm saying, but that's again impressive. Top 3 in rebounding 5 times. Never first actually in the league in rebounding. If you look at basically that peak period of his of 2000 to 2003 in the playoffs, as you mentioned, tended to step up his game, especially in the playoffs. Had some really dominant finals performances. Of course, he's battling against guys like Todd McCullough, so maybe a little asterisk there. But he had 36.9 points per 100 and 18.2 rebounds per 100 during that time, during those 4 seasons. And the only other players who have had similar rates in a postseason were Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, George McGinnis, Tim Duncan, and Hakeem Olajuwon. So obviously that's a small group there. This is since '74 because that's when that was kept track of. So we're not counting Russell, who probably wouldn't have gotten there with the points. Not counting Wilt, of course, or Mikan for that matter. Now Shaq did have 6 postseasons with 35 plus points per 100 possessions and 15 plus rebounds per 100 possessions, which is significantly more than any other player. The only other player with anywhere close to multiple ones since '74 was Karl Malone, who had 3. So, that says something right there. I don't know exactly what it says, and again, we're measuring only over a certain amount of time, but I think it's something right there. And we have, again, I think dominant depends on your point of view, because if you look at certain highlights and him like plowing through, big strong guys like David Robinson and Hakeem and, even like, even like lesser known players. I mean, he, just his ability to just knock guys around and just, be completely strong and dominant. If that's what you mean, then yeah, okay, there's an argument for it. If you're talking about like, plowing through the stats or just being the dominant stat leader, dominant scorer, dominant rebounder, during his time, then I don't think it's quite as strong. I mean, he was obviously excellent, one of the great big men of all time, but in terms of, most dominant ever, I think they're probably the guys who have a better case.
Absolutely, yeah, and some of the cons when we look at Shaq, particularly on like the statistical realm and why he maybe wasn't so dominant in terms of scoring and why he didn't have more 50-point games and all that sort of stuff. I mean, one thing that you obviously have to look at is the free throws, which was his real Achilles heel. Below 50% free throw shooting, 7 of his 19 NBA seasons, and below 60% in all but one season. I believe the one he was above was like right on the dot of 60. So not a good free throw shooter. You know that if you've ever watched Shaq play basketball, you're well aware of that the man could get fouled a lot. The man could score around the basket, but just free throws just never quite worked. Also, relatively low minute per game. Even in his prime, Shaq was a guy who, for whatever reason, didn't play super, super heavy minutes to the level that a lot of other, still, yeah, very, very high minutes, but not nearly as much as kind of your dominant all-time players. And actually, I kind of wanted to run the numbers too. He's one of only 15 Hall of Famers to average 20 or more points in their career, but have under 35 minutes played per game in their career. So a lot of that, probably gets weighed down by, some of those final years there, the Celtics year and some of the Phoenix years or whatnot too. But he's not a guy who really languished. It's not like he had 5 years where he was just doing nothing in the league. This is a guy who maybe a year or two where things started to kind of fall, and then he was kind of done already. So and a lot of players run through that too. So I still think it's pretty interesting though that he is one of only 15 to kind of hit that threshold. And obviously, another part, too, that probably leads to Shaq maybe not having these kind of gaudy scoring numbers, and he's not the first big man ever to do this, but, the lack of an outside game was, not anything that nobody in their right mind would say, hey, Shaq, you're good around the basket, bud, but why don't you go from 18 feet? Or, hey, try a three-pointer. Nobody in the world was going to tell Shaquille O'Neal at that time to do that, so he obviously didn't do that, but still not a single three made in his career. We have data going back to 2001 on Basketball Reference, so that was pretty interesting, and Shaq averaged less than 1% of his field goal attempts from 10 to 16 feet, so he was not a guy that was ever going to really stretch it out from there. 53.6% of his shots were from the 0 and 3 feet, so right at the basket, and 39.7% from 3 to 10 feet. So the offensive game was very much kind of rim-oriented, at the rim, and that's not to say he was just a guy that would plow through people and dunk. He had really good hooks, he had really good sort of finesse around the basket too, but he wasn't a guy that could score from a bunch of different places on the court. He could score from basically one place on the court, but he was as dominant as almost anybody at scoring at that part of the court. But it does kind of cause an issue, is that if you can sort of work Shaq away from the basket, or if there's some reason that Shaq's a little off, he wasn't going to be able to score in a bunch of different ways. He had a few different ways to score, and if those weren't working, he wasn't, maybe you weren't going to get an explosion from Shaq that day as well. And then we also have to mention too, the physical fitness was a big issue for Shaq. He obviously comes into the league in Orlando, and he's slim and he's trim and he's just bouncing all over the place, and he's a maniac and he's everywhere. But people forget that, and if you go back and look at some articles, when he first came to the Lakers, there were some questions about what's wrong with this guy? Why is he so out of shape? He was injured a lot, and he had plumped up a lot. He had become pretty big. He got himself back into shape, and that's really what led to that 2000 to 2003 dominance, the period that you talked about there. Right after that, he kind of got big again, and that's, Shaq is always going to be somebody. You see what he looks like now. You see what his body frame is like. He's always a guy that's going to battle, physical limits and his ability to kind of stay in shape. And I think that probably played a part in maybe him not having, high minutes per game and not having the ability to have these giant, scoring explosions. So there's that. And then I think another aspect about it too is he kind of often played with high usage players as well. Also elite scorers, guys like a Penny Hardaway who needed the ball and was, an elite scorer at his time. Kobe Bryant, of course, the emergence of Kobe Bryant in LA led to a lot of the Lakers' success, but it also led to Shaq maybe not having as dominant performances as he probably could have. And then, his last little big run was with Dwayne Wade, who, when he came to Miami, Shaq was the man, but little by little Wade started emerging as, a scorer and leading them to a championship and all that sort of stuff. So again, another guy who needed the ball in his hands and needed to kind of score to be effective on the court. So there's a lot of different reasons why maybe Shaq isn't as dominant, but I think it is still pretty interesting to look at it and say, man, for being as dominant as we all know that Shaq was, for him not to have that many scoring outbursts and not to have that many 50-point games, it's just a little unique, because we've talked about the other big men in history, and those guys have tons of them. Wilt Chamberlain, we had a whole episode about Wilt Chamberlain's 50-point games, and then here's Shaq, who, was so dominant, was unguardable, but then, he's only got a handful of them, so it's interesting, definitely.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, and the legend has it that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who was the assistant coach for the Clippers, legend that Shaq had extra motivation to shove it in Kareem's face for this game in particular. Obviously it's incredibly dominant performance, but I think there's really good. I think it's a really nice look at kind of the pros and cons there of Shaq. Moving on to 2001, there were 12 50-point games that season, which was the most since 1990. 8 different players broke the mark, which is tied for the most since 1972, when there were 11 players. And there were also 3 50s in the playoffs, which is the first time that it happened since 1970. So definitely a breakthrough year for the 50-point games.
Some fun names in there too.
Yeah, a lot of the guys who were new to the club this year. We'll start off with Anton Jameson, who had 2 in back-to-back games. The first being on December 3rd, 2000. 51 points, 14 rebounds, and then he followed it up in a game against the Lakers with, again, 51 points, 13 rebounds, 5 assists. And that also happened to be the same game in which Kobe Bryant, at age 22, got the first 50-point game of his career.
Yeah, good stuff there. So I remember the back-to-back Jameson. I don't know why, but I was vividly in my head for whatever reason. I remember the Anton Jameson back-to-backs. I don't know why either. I guess I was a big 2001 Warriors fan, which is an unfortunate thing to be. But
hey, yeah, made up for it later. And then of course the legendary 2004-2005 Hawk Tony Delk. Who had 53 points and 6 rebounds for the Suns. We talked about that in our Unlikely Player series. Definitely one of the premier guys that you kind of forget about who are in that club that we covered earlier on. And then next, January 5th, 2001, Chris Webber with 51 points, 26 rebounds, and also 5 assists, 3 steals. Which is the most rebounds in any game since 1975. The first 50-point game in Sacramento Kings history. Of course, it had happened in other instances with the franchise. I don't think it ever happened with Kansas City Kings, though, now that I think about it. I think we'd have to go back on that, but I don't believe that it happened, of course, with the Cincinnati Royals with Oscar Robertson, but I'm not sure that it ever happened with the Kansas City Kings offhand. I don't think Archibald did it, so I'm not sure
looks like Pete Maravich maybe got one.
Well, not for the Kings, though.
Oh, sorry. No, that was the opponent. Sorry. Yeah, I was like, what the hell? I was like, what the hell did Pete Maravich play? Okay, no, they only had one against them. Yeah, sorry. Quick search there. Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah. So Pete Maravich scored a 50 against them, but no, they did not have one on their own. So
yes, there you go. Also, very low true shooting percentage here, 51.37%. He was 24 of 47 from the field in this game. 47 shots for Chris Webber, who's more. I mean, certainly a scorer, but also guy known for a lot of passing, and they were a team that wasn't necessarily ISO heavy. So interesting there, and it was against the Pacers, and they lost this game. As a matter of fact, it was an overtime game. Webber played 50 minutes in this game. So yeah, that's certainly an interesting one there.
Yeah, I'm trying to look at I'm looking at the box score right now to try to figure out what the hell happened. Peja played. He played 44 minutes. He didn't do much, and Jason Williams was playing, and Doug Christie was playing. Everybody played. I don't think anybody missed time, but for some reason they're like, you know what, Chris, you want us to shoot 50 times this game? And he's like, yeah, sure. And they went with it because there's just no reason. Yeah, Hito Turkoglu's playing. Everybody's playing, but they're not shooting, and Chris is. So okay, whatever.
Yes. Allen Iverson had a couple in January 2001, 54-point game effort, followed just 2 weeks later by a 51-point game effort. Interestingly enough, Iverson has 3 of the 5 lowest recorded game scores in a 50-plus point game. Of course, it's not recorded for every 50-plus point game, but they are, for these 2 games, they are 30.1 and 41.3. The one that he had in 2000 was also 30.1. I believe the one in 97 is also rather low too. So those are still good game scores. It's not like those are. I was 29.1 was the one in 97. So those are still very, very good. But just interestingly enough, for whatever reason, probably the volume shooting or lack of other things in the box score. His are relatively low on the scale. Again, a scale. It's pretty hard to have a 50-point game and not have a great game score.
Sure, exactly. Yeah, and that second one, too, he shoots 20 of 40 from the field, too. So similar to Chris Webber, it's and that's kind of the Allen Iverson thing. And that's you're okay with that because that's kind of Allen Iverson. He's going to shoot 40 times, and if he makes more than 20 of them, good. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, you lived and died by Allen Iverson. The Sixers literally this year lived and died by Allen Iverson all the way to the NBA Finals. So
yes. Stephon Marbury in February of 2001, he had 50 points and 12 assists. Is one of 3 instances between 1976 and 2008 where there are 10-plus assists in a 50-plus point game. So a rare occurrence during this time, and then it would start to become more common. And of course, now with James Harden and Russell Westbrook, it's almost expected in certain instances.
Yeah, this time, though, a little tougher.
It is true. So, Jerry Stackhouse, another new guy to the club, 57 points, 4 rebounds, 5 assists, playing for the Pistons against the Bulls. This was in April of 2001. And then we have our 3 instances in the playoffs. Allen Iverson, for the 5th time in his career, the 3rd time this season, does so, and this was against Toronto. And in the same series, Vince Carter does so 2 days later against Philly, 50 points, 6 rebounds, 7 assists, and 4 blocks on 82 true shooting percentage, 19 of 29 from the field. And then Iverson comes back and does it again. Also against in the same series, just on the 16th of May, he has 52 with 7 assists and 4 steals, and yeah, so a remarkable little duel between the two. Of course, famously, Philly wins that a series on the missed shot by Vince Carter, but definitely some classic basketball going on there.
Great series, yeah, all time great.
Yeah. So yeah, I wanted to get just briefly into Anton Jamison again because he is one of the we mentioned it last time. I think we talked about Tom Chambers. He's one of the few players who has scored 20,000 points in their career, like Chambers. Also, I believe Joe Johnson is in that club.
Yes,
and,
yeah.
And then Jamal Crawford is likely to be there pretty soon. But I think those are 4 guys who are not likely to make the Hall of Fame, but have reached that point. But it's kind of interesting. They really, he and Chambers in particular, really have similar production and probably a slight edge, honestly, to Jamison. And I think of Chambers more as a borderline Hall of Famer, and I think of Jamison really as not one who would really be a serious candidate. Part of that is because Chambers has 2 All-NBA nods in his career, 2 second teams. Jamison did not have any. Relatively similar, all-star appearances, all that good stuff. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that in particular, but I just thought that was kind of interesting.
No, it definitely is. And Jamison's an odd character because, I remember I actually just today was doing a search on 20,000 point game score or 20,000 scores, and Jamison came up and I'm like, oh, what? Anton Jamison is it? That's only, and I know that we had talked about it before, and I remembered. I'm like, oh yeah, that's interesting. And I'm looking at the list, and I went back and I said, okay, who aren't Hall of Famers? And then you do the sort by Hall of Famers on Basketball Reference, and there's a bunch of other guys, but like everybody else is still about to be in the Hall of Fame or still actively playing, but probably Hall of Fame bound. And then you have guys like a Jamison and Chambers who really stand out as guys that aren't in the Hall of Fame. And Jamison in particular is a guy that's just like, as you said, you're kind of like, I don't know, man. Like, never really led the league in much. Was kind of he's around for many years, and obviously a great scorer through all that time. But I don't know. Maybe we do have to think about his Hall of Fame candidacy a little bit more. But also at the same time, I just he doesn't feel like a Hall of Famer. You just kind of have this feeling for it too. And he's not a guy who having watched most of his career, in as it happened, wasn't a guy that jumped out at me of saying, hey, I'm watching a Hall of Famer play right now. So it's he's an interesting case for sure. It's definitely a little odd.
Yes, and as you mentioned, Jamison now joins the club of players with 50 in back-to-back games. The full list that we found is Wilt Chamberlain, Elgin Baylor, Rick Barry, John Brisker, Bernard King, Michael Jordan, Allen Iverson, Anton Jamison, Kobe Bryant, James Harden, and Devin Booker. So as of 2019, that is the list. So 2002, we have 6 games of 50-plus. New to the club are Sharif Abdur-Rahim and Tim Duncan. Abdur-Rahim's was in November of 2001, 50 points, 12 rebounds, 5 assists, and it is the most recent 50 for the Atlanta Hawks. They have not had one since this time, so almost a couple decades there. Duncan's is the only 50-plus of his career, 53 points, 11 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 blocks came against the Mavericks, actually in a loss. So interesting thing there. Are you surprised that Duncan only had one in his career?
Not really. And like it's similar to the conversation with Shaq where we're talking about, is he really all that dominant if he never had a 50-point game or whatever, which wasn't exactly our argument, but people will hear what they want to hear sometimes. But as far as the Duncan one, I just never thought of Duncan as like a volume. I think of him as like this all-time great player because he was able to do so many things and he was so important to everything that the Spurs did and so important to everything going on the offense and everything going on defense and whatnot. But I never thought of him as a guy that would just like sit down there on the block and just get his 50 points. So I'm not surprised. Like if you had told me, I'd be more surprised if you told me he never had a 50-point game. You know what I mean? Because it's just, I never thought of him as like that sort of big-time volume scorer. Definitely a guy that's going to get you like 30, but then at that point he's going to try to look for everybody else and make sure. So no, I'm not super surprised by that, of Duncan only having the one. But I mean, maybe I should be. Maybe he should have had a few more than that. But no, I'm not too.
Yeah, no, I'm not hugely surprised. It wouldn't have surprised me if he had a couple more. But by the way, his career high in points is 25.5 in the 2002 season. So he had above 22 points per game 5 times in his career. So obviously not huge. Not huge by the top ever all-time scoring standards, but certainly obviously a stout scorer in its own right. At his peak, along with everything else. Next, we have Michael Jordan. His last 50-point game of his career, the 39th total. Only one for the Washington Wizards. 51 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists, and 3 steals. Up until this just past season, he held the record as the oldest 50-point scorer, but that has since been broken. We'll talk about that toward the end of the show. And Jordan, obviously his Wizards gets made fun of a lot, but he actually, he still was a very good player for the most part during that time. He obviously, was not near what he was at his peak, but still, obviously had some big games in this, being probably the best among them.
Absolutely, yeah. We're going to talk about him a little bit later, too, when we talk about kind of old dudes scoring 50 and old dudes, scoring outputs. Yeah, I mean, it's seen as kind of the dark ages of Jordan's career, but he's still pretty damn good, even at this time. And, yeah, he only had, 2 moves, and he wasn't really, all over the court and doing stuff. But, yeah, there's some fun highlights in that, too. It's not, you don't have to completely ignore that it occurred. It's not great, and it's kind of weird, but it occurred, and he was still pretty damn good at this time, too. So, no, there was some highlights there for sure. With this, as you said, being definitely probably the biggest highlight.
Yeah, absolutely. So Kobe Bryant has another performance: 56 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists. Allen Iverson, 58 points, which I believe is his career high. And then rounding out the 2002 season is Tracy McGrady for the Orlando Magic, 50 points, 10 rebounds, the first 50 of his career. So then we move on to the 2000 and actually, you know what? He was I haven't marked it incorrectly here, but this he's actually also new to the club along with Abdur Rahim and Duncan. I accidentally had him listed in 2003, but he actually had his first in 2002. So I don't know, Rich. What do you remember about the 2003 season?
I remember that Jamal Mashburn had a 50-point game. No, it's not what I remember because I'm looking at it right now.
Yes.
Now, what do I remember about the 2003 season? I don't know if I remember that much about the 2003 season. I don't know why. I guess there was some fun stuff in that season, but no, I don't know. Nothing really jumps out of my head, I don't think.
Well, we are dubbing it officially the season of Mashburn.
Oh, we are? Okay.
Yes.
I'm glad. Oh, thank God. All right. Yeah.
Jamal Mashburn has his second 50-point game of his career.
2003. Yeah. I don't remember what team he played for in 2003. Was he a Hornet at that time?
He was a New Orleans Hornet. Technically, it's the first 50 in Pelicans history.
Oh, God damn it!
Yes.
I got more people on board, by the way. With the we were talking about something about Anthony Davis. And I got on board. We were talking about, I forget what the exact conversation was, but I have a bunch of my friends in on it now. Everybody understands, and they're with me now that this is the stupidest thing ever, the franchise history thing. So,
right.
We're gaining some steam here. We got to do some canvassing, try to get a few more people, but the wave it's happening, Jason. It's happening. So,
all right. Well, I appreciate that because again, it's just
Pelicans legend Jamal Mashburn. Who could forget?
Right. Yeah. Well, it's like Pelicans legend Chris Paul.
Right. Half of Chris Paul, not all the Chris Paul, but some of the Chris Paul.
Right, some of the Chris Paul. So yes, this was the first 50 in Hornets history, but then the Hornets history went to the other team, and then so it's the first 50 Pelicans history. So it's not confusing at all. Obviously, it just totally makes intuitive sense, and we're just complaining, needlessly about it. Yes. So this was the longest gap between two 50-point games, 8 years and 3 months. Until Jamal Crawford recently broke that record, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Jamal's was 10 years, 4 months. And in terms of the longest between their first and last 50, actually, this is not on the list among the top ones, although it's I think it's in the top 10. But the longest are Jamal Crawford with 16 seasons between his first and last. Kobe
what a
also
national treasure. What a
seasons.
national treasure Jamal Crawford is.
Oh, Jamal Crawford is wonderful. We love, of course, Jamal Crawford would be favorite of the show. Probably officially over Back's favorite player. I think we can declare that. LeBron, 15 seasons, of course, still active. Could break that. Jordan, so his is a little weird because it was 13 seasons, but actually 17 years because he missed 4 of those seasons with the baseball hiatus and his second retirement. Rick Barry, 12 seasons. Allen Iverson, 11 seasons. And Wilt Chamberlain, 10 seasons. So I found that kind of interesting there. And then the other performances in 2003, Kobe Bryant has 2 50-point games. Allen Houston also has 2 50-point games, which are the first 2 of his career. So he's new to the club that year. I believe the only 2 of his career. Kobe later on in March of 2003 joins the five-time club with 55 points. And Allen Iverson has the 34th instance in playoff history in a it's a Sixers versus Hornets game, New Orleans Hornets game, back when the Hornets were in the Eastern Conference, because this, of course, is before the Hornets moved west when the Bobcats.
Yes.
Yeah, of course, the Bobcats, I mean, obviously no
fake
team
NBA team.
in the NBA called the Bobcats ever existed, so that must be a typo, but anyway, it's not confusing at all.
No, definitely not. But what a kind of an eclectic mix of guys here in this 2003. You got your Allen Houston types. You have your Jamal Mashburns. You have Tracy McGrady, who definitely, when the real answer for what do I remember about the 2003 season is probably Tracy McGrady's dominance that year.
Right.
So it's kind of interesting
awesome.
to see him there. But I would assume a little bit more for Tracy McGrady, but I guess that the pace at the time didn't lead to it nearly as much. But only one this year or 2 or no, just one. Yeah, just one this year, which I'm kind of surprised because he was such a dominant scorer this year. I think he averaged 30 plus a game, if I remember correctly.
He averaged 32.1 points per game, 6.5 rebounds, 5.5 assists. So
he was awesome. He was just incredible this year. I'm actually kind of surprised he doesn't have more 50-point games. I mean, when you average 32, it's weird that he didn't explode for a few more. But there's that. But interesting. Allen Houston with 2 this year, which seems like 2003. Allen Houston, really? But right. It's a fun little year in this capsule of kind of looking at all these different 50-pointers. So.
Yeah, McGrady, he shot almost 39% from 3 on 6 attempts per game, which was very high at that point.
Yeah.
And his true shooting that year was 564 and 30.3 PER. Yeah, this was a good season. He definitely. He definitely was good that year. No question about that. Probably deserved the MVP that year, although Duncan got it, so he probably deserved it. I'm not going to ever go against the choice of Tim Duncan for MVP because he was really good. So moving on to 2004, another newbie to the club, Rashard Lewis, breaking out for the Seattle Sonics with a 50-point game, 81 true shooting percentage too. Quite a dominant performance against the Clippers. McGrady has another one against Denver, 51 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists. Iverson has adds another to the total against the Hawks. And then McGrady has the last of his career, 62 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists. And this was in March of 2004. And this was also the most recent 50-point game for the Magic. So it's been quite a while for the franchise for that as well.
Yeah, they tried to get Terrence Ross to try to bring that 50 points love to the Orlando, but did not work. That's kind of bad. 2004, the last 50 for the Magic is because they've had some good players, a lot of number 1 overall picks and top draft picks, and that's kind of that's interesting. Yeah, that they haven't had one since then. That's it's not good. Sorry, Orlando.
Yeah, and then last for 2004 season, Jamal Crawford,
of course,
first of his career with the Bulls. Against the Raptors, 50 points, 7 rebounds, 24 years young. Jamal Crawford, just a babe in the league. And then, he's obviously going to be doing some amazing things in the future, which we will get to when we get to those seasons. But, there were 5 total in 2004, down from 8 in 2003. But we're fairly steady in our numbers for the most part over this time. We're going to get a pretty big boost coming up soon. In 2005, we have a bunch of newbies again.
Yeah, we got some big names here. Dirk Nowitzki finally makes his appearance here. Amari Stoudemire, Jermaine O'Neal, Damon Stoudemire. We'll talk about that a little bit because I think it's kind of interesting that by 2005, I don't know if I would assume that Damon Stoudemire would find his way to the 50-point game list, but here he is. And then LeBron James, new to the club here. So yeah, basically two of the best 10 players of all time, and then also some pretty good guys in terms of Amari Stoudemire, Jermaine O'Neal, and then Damon Stoudemire too. We shouldn't besmirch the name of Mighty Mouse, but what a year for first timers here.
Yeah, so Dirk was he was the 120th player to cross 50. He had 16 rebounds in that game. It was against Houston. Iverson had 2 performances, including his second in December 2004. Was 6 assists, 7 steals. It was the most steals in a 50 since the 1989 season. And back-to-back games, in fact, on the December 18th and December 20th, as we mentioned, he's part of that career. It was the second game was the 10th 50-plus point game in his career, and it was the only time he ever fouled out in a 50-plus game in his career. So
that's awesome.
Amari's was his only 50-plus point game of his career, which is a bit of a surprise. He had some big scoring outbursts, and also, of course, he played for a team that scored a lot of points. But they usually spread the ball around. It wasn't really one guy doing that for the most part. Jermaine O'Neal with the most recent 50 for the Pacers. As you mentioned, Damon Stoudemire playing at this point for the Trailblazers. I guess this was still sort of the Jailblazers period, although it was near the end of that. In a loss against the Hornets, now in the Western Conference Hornets. And then Allen Iverson has his career high near the end of the season, 60 points. I was wrong about that before with 58. It was actually 60. He also had 6 assists and 5 steals in that game. That was against the Magic. And then, as we talked about, LeBron James, 56 points for the Cavaliers against the Raptors. Raptors have given up a lot of 50-point games during that time. This was, as you mentioned, the first of his career. He was at the time the youngest ever to hit that threshold. It beat Spencer Haywood's 1970 record in the ABA and then Rick Barry, who had the NBA record in 1966. So that is the 2005 season.
Absolutely, yeah, really good stuff there, and just some fun names to pop up there. But yeah, David Stoudemire, I love the idea of. I just would never have thought. I wouldn't have think of him as ever getting a 50-point game. But I also like too that in this 50-point game, he pretty much did nothing else either. He had 1 assist and 1 steal, and that doesn't sound at all like David Stoudemire. I don't know what got into him. That seems like he got to the arena and was like, I'm going to try to score 50 today. And everyone's like, all right, whatever, dude. It's 2005 Blazers. We're kind of a disaster anyway. So yeah, knock yourself out. But it's just odd because it's David Stoudemire. I mean, what, assists and steals and all that other stuff. None of that. Just points for Damon this night. But hey.
Yeah, and he was not too far from being out of the league.
Right. That's that too. It's 2005. Yeah. He's not really come in 1995. So he's 10 years into the league now and hadn't really shown any ability to have giant scoring explosions. So it's definitely, because I think he was done by 08, I want to say. 08 or 09, I want to say was his last year.
You're right, 08. Yeah, he split with Memphis and the Spurs in 08.
He didn't play with the Spurs. That's odd. I'm looking at it too, and I don't believe it. I don't remember that. That didn't happen. There's no way.
Yeah, no way. Yeah, 31 at that point. So interesting stuff. Yeah, kind of random. Going to the 2006 season, and then this is the year that Kobe begins his few seasons of scoring explosions. He has 7 50-point games in this season. There are 14 total, and there's only one player who's new to the club. It is Paul Pierce. So LeBron begins the season on December 10th, 2005 with 52 points, 7 rebounds, 7 assists, and then Kobe. Just 10 days later, 62 points in just 3 quarters against the Dallas Mavericks, which is quite the incredible feat. The Mavericks were off to just a blazing start that year. I think ended up having the league's best record that year, and for Kobe to and a stout defense as well for Kobe to do that is arguably as impressive as his 81-point performance later on that season.
Yeah, definitely. And talking about the explosion, we're going to talk about him a lot here Kobe Bryant, because this is when he kind of starts feeling himself. Obviously Shaq has moved on, and it's kind of Kobe's team, which is, good for Kobe scoring, bad so much for Lakers' success. But yeah, we're going to talk a lot about him in these next few years, because he's really just kind of emerged as kind of this elite scorer that a lot of us knew he was capable of. He just kind of needed the ball in his hands a little bit more to do it. But yeah, like you said, the downside is a lot less championships coming to the Lakers at this time.
Right. Yeah, we'll have to look at the win-loss record of some of these just to get a sense of that. 'Cause that's interesting. Iverson and Vince Carter actually have one on the same date, although a different game. Iverson's was against the Hawks again. It was the most, in fact, is the most recent 50-point game for the Sixers franchise. So 2005 was the last one. Carter's was the last 50 of his career. This was he was now in the Nets at this point. Against Miami. And then Kobe in January 7th, 2006 against the Clippers. This was in a win. This was 50 points, 8 rebounds, 8 assists. And then on the 19th of January, 2006, 51 points, 9 rebounds, 4 assists. This was in a loss against the Kings. LeBron James then with 51 points, 5 rebounds, 8 assists, and against the Jazz. And then we have the big one. Just one day after LeBron's January 22, 2006, 81 points, 6 rebounds, 3 steals against the Raptors. So he, in fact, had 4 games just between December 20th and January 22nd, of course, capped by the 81. This is the second highest game score in NBA history. He was the 5th player to break 70 and only the 2nd to break 80. Of course, the other being Wilt Chamberlain with 100 points. So,
yeah, I mean, all time, just one of the greatest games of all time, and just a fun one to go back and watch. And we did that one of our Christmas episodes, right? We took a shot.
We did a different Kobe one. We didn't do. We did the one in Madison Square Garden where he scored.
That's right. Yeah, we had trouble finding a full complete game of the 81, but you should go back and watch it anyway because it's a fun game regardless to check out. But arguably one of the greatest single game performances of all time in NBA history. So yeah, definitely one to we've talked about many times on the show. You can't escape it. But yeah, it just sticks out there when you're looking at 50, 50, 50, 50, 81. It's amazing.
Yes. Then Paul Pierce, January of 2015, the only 50-point game of his career. It came in a loss against the Cavs. He also fouled out during this game. Dirk Nowitzki with 51, 9 rebounds, 5 assists, and an 81 true shooting percentage, a 16 of 24 from the field. So pretty good game for him against the Warriors. And then Kobe with the next 3, April of 06 against the Suns in a loss. Then the 10th of his career against the Trailblazers in a win. And then the 35th in playoff history on May 4th, 06 against the Suns, coming in 52 minutes in another loss. So again, this was a point in which the Lakers, unfortunately, I'm not trying to say that Kobe scoring all these points is the reason they're losing. The reason they're losing is because they don't have a lot of depth because. They had Lamar Odom. Andrew Bynum was still very young. They traded away Caron Butler for Kwame Brown, so that didn't work out well for them. So they just don't have a lot of weapons at this point. Smush Parker's still there, so not a really good team. So I think Kobe was within his bounds to try to score as many points, and they just didn't happen to win. All the games because that's just kind of what happened. So
they employed Smush Parker a lot too, and that's usually not a good way to
not ideal.
a lot of basketball games, unfortunately. So
yes, and then ending the season, Dirk, the 36th 50 in playoff history. This came against the Suns. They're giving up a lot of 50s during this time. This was a win. The third in his career and the most recent 50-point game for the Mavericks. So
third and final. We when we started this, we put likely in our notes, but I do not unless he makes a random comeback and then emerges as somehow a dominant scorer again, even though he can't move. Then he might get one of 50 again. But this will definitely most likely 99.9% be the last final. The final 50 plus of Dirk's career. I'd like Dirk to come back in 4 years and just drop 50.
There you go. Yeah.
Why he's back, who knows? He's like 45 years old.
Why not? Yeah.
Just has a night, just has a night where he's just feeling himself. So
yeah, sure. So Kobe in the 2006 season has 7. The 2007 season, he is going to have 10 50-point games. There are 18 total in the season, which is the most in quite a long time. In fact, it is the most since 1972, in which there were 19 total. So, going through them, we had beginning of the season, Michael Redd with 57 points. He is becomes the 4th Michael or Mike to score 50 plus in their career. And then
that's certainly the most famous of the Mikes to score
obviously
50s.
Michael Redd, the most famous.
It's clearly Michael Redd, yeah.
Yeah, obviously. That's obviously clear. So Kobe has 2 in November and in December, including 53, 10, and 8. This is against the Rockets, and they did win both of these games. Yes, they did win both of these games. Gilbert Arenas also blasts off in 2007. He has a 60-point game, 8 rebounds, 8 assists against the Lakers, in fact, in a win. And then just 5 days later, 54-point effort against the Suns in another win. Rip Hamilton getting in on the fun right after Christmas in 2006 against the Knicks. In fact, I remember watching this game. I was in Michigan at the time, watching it on the local the local sports channel, and it was quite an enjoyable game against the Knicks beat the Pistons 151 to 145. This was a triple overtime game, and Hamilton in 51. Stephon Marbury had 41. Jamal Crawford only 29, but he had quite a wonderful, exciting game. 11 assists, and this was quite the random, enjoyable enjoyable game with one good team and one pretty bad team.
Yeah, and also we should mention went to 3 overtimes too, which certainly helped
the
scoring output a little bit there. But pretty fun game, and I do remember that one as well, because especially in this time period, even in a triple overtime game, this time period of the NBA, not quite known for like scoring explosions like this, so it was pretty fun to see everyone kind of just go out there and score some points now. And now 151 to 145 is just a Tuesday in today's NBA, so that's just that's just Suns versus Kings on a normal Tuesday or whatever these days. But no, of course I'm exaggerating, but at that time it was like, oh my god, look at all these points. Like, just wasn't quite happening. The league's changing a little bit at this time, but not quite to what it is these days.
Yeah, there you go. So then Kobe's back the end of December 06, 58 points against the Charlotte team, not the New Orleans team. Ray Allen in January of 07, he's with the Sonics at this point, 54, 10, and 5 against the Jazz. I should mention the Kobe game was in a loss against the Charlotte team, interestingly enough there. Gilbert Arenas was with his 3rd of the season against the Jazz. Jamal Crawford back on the board now with the Knicks. 52 points, 81 true shooting percentage against the Heat in a win. Michael Redd gets his 2nd one of the season against the Bulls. That was a loss. And then huge run by Kobe Bryant starting in March 16th, 2007. 65 against the Blazers in a win. 50 against the Timberwolves, also a win. 60 against the Grizzlies in a win. And 50 against the New Orleans. This is when the Hornets were in New Orleans and Oklahoma City after Katrina. So it's the NOK listed here. So for a brief moment I was confused, but yes, the Hornets there, and 53 on March 30th against the Rockets in a loss, and then 50 and 9 rebounds against the Clippers in a loss, and then on April 15th. 50 against the Sonics in a win and had 81 true shooting percentage there. So yes, that is a 7 games in a calendar in a month between April 16th between March 16th and April 15th. 7 performances there, so that's quite remarkable in many ways.
Yeah, it's not Wilt level, but it's we haven't seen this in a while where just one player kind of dominates his leaderboard and has so many particular games, and also throwing 260s in there too is nothing to scoff at as well, and especially it being a perimeter based player in Kobe Bryant too is I think something that definitely does is worth noting, because a lot of the guys we talked about in history that have had these just giant scoring binges or almost dominate an entire year in terms of 50-point games have been big men, have been guys that had either one discernible skill or were bigger than most other people or whatever, whereas Kobe Bryant is doing it by perimeter shooting and doing it pretty well too, pretty efficiently. For all the kind of jokes that we make about Kobe Bryant, I mean, there's not a lot of like really terrible shooting games in here too. There's a few where he's putting up 40 shots or whatever, but he's making a lot of those shots too, and the ones he's putting up 40 and he's scoring 60. So it's not like he's just chucking out of nowhere and just lucking his way into 50-point games. I mean, these are very good performances by Kobe.
Absolutely, yeah. Only one notably tough one was the Houston one, where he was 19 of 44, 52 true shooting. But outside of that, these are really good performances. Shooting the ball as well as everything else. So the most 50 plus by a player in a season. To recap that, Will Chamberlain 62 had 46, in 63 he had 30. Kobe Bryant third on the board this season with 10. Also tied with Chamberlain in the 1964 season. In 65, Chamberlain had 9. James Harden had 9 in the 2019 season that we just completed. Chamberlain had 8 in 1961, and then Jordan's most was 1987 with 8. So those are your leaders in that category. The 2007 season, the first season with 3 60-plus point games since 1990, and it has only happened 6 times, 62, 63, which of course, two of the scoring binge years, and then in more regular type seasons, 90, 2007, and 2019. So only happened 5 times in NBA history. Yep. And as you mentioned, alluded to the new players to the club: Michael Redd, Gilbert Arenas, Rip Hamilton, and Ray Allen. So moving on to 2008, after the scoring binge, of course, of 2007, we kind of get back to a normal level. Only 5 this year. 2 of them by LeBron, 2 by Kobe, and it is the last 50 of Allen Iverson's career, which happens as a Denver Nugget. You might have forgotten about Nuggets.
I remembered that he was a Nugget, but I never thought that he would have had a 50-point game as a Nugget. I mean, certainly he would not have one as a Grizzly or a Piston, but I was kind of surprised. I mean, he wasn't totally washed at this point too, but I just for whatever reason, would never have thought of Iverson getting a 50 with the Nuggets, but here it is. So good. Yeah,
he had a good year and a half with them.
Sure,
and then he fell off pretty quickly after the Pistons. But yes, this happened in December of 2007. That wasn't long after the trade, I believe. I believe he was traded. He was traded early on in the season. I believe.
Definitely.
So it was would have been like a month after or so after he joined the team.
Mm-hmm.
LeBron had another instance, 51, 8, and 9 against the Grizzlies. Kobe with 52, 11, and 4 against the Mavericks. LeBron with 58 and 10, kind of close, a couple of almost triple doubles. Of course, that had not happened since 1975 at this point. And then Kobe wrapping up the season with 53 and 10 rebounds against the he did it twice, or the Grizzlies gave it up twice this year, but the Grizzlies actually won this game against the Lakers. And this was actually after the Gasol trade, I believe. It would have been April, or excuse me, I keep saying April for March for some reason. March 28th, 2008, that would have been after the Gasol trade. So interestingly enough, they lost to Memphis after the Gasol trade, which I would not have expected.
No, because that was a bad team.
Right.
They lost their best player. And got very little in return. Eventually they got stuff in return. But at the time, not much in return. So.
Took a while, yeah. So, not much more to say about that season. 2009, LeBron and Dwayne Wade both have 3. In fact, it is the only 3 50-point games of Dwayne Wade's career, which is kind of interesting, to all happen in one season, and for him to have his first, not midway through his career. At this point, he was 27, so he wasn't old by any means, but he'd been in the league for a while. So, I guess a slight surprise. Also new to the club were Tony Parker, Brandon Roy, and Kevin Martin. And Wade, the players who got all of their 50-plus point games in the same season are as follows. Isaiah Thomas in 2017, Kyrie Irving in 2015, Dwayne Wade in 2009, Michael Redd in 2007, Gilbert Arenas in 2007, Allen Houston in 2003. Interestingly enough, all of Allen Houston's came after the age of 31. He had 2 in a month. Anton Jameson, as we mentioned, Tom Chambers in 1990 also came after age 30. Kiki Vandeweghe in 84, Jeff Petrie in 73, Charlie Scott in 72, Dan Issel in 71, Connie Hawkins in 69, although he had won in the American Basketball League in 1962, which we did not include for this project, Oscar Robertson in 65, and George Yardley in 58. So, and then Wade and Arenas are the only to have 3 in a season, as opposed to the others only had 2 in a season.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And of course, Irving could, theoretically could still do so. I guess Isaiah Thomas could too, although he seems like he's past that point in his career, though you never know.
Yeah, maybe, but I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if anyone's going to give him the opportunity. But yeah, the Wade only having 3 and all of them happening in 1 year, and that year being 2009, it's just odd. Yeah, I just thought that he would have had a few more there because he was such a good scorer and a guy who, especially when we talk about a lot of these guys that are able to pile up these 50-point games, going to the free throw line is a big part of that as well. And Wade's a guy who lived at the line in some years, so it's kind of surprising they didn't have a few more of those games, especially since he was dominant for a few years prior to this and would still be a pretty good player for another 3-4 years until obviously LeBron comes into town and he has to kind of share some duties. But I mean, man, like the next year, the few years before that, it's just shocking that maybe didn't have a few more than that.
Yeah, and this was a really standout year for him in terms of just really carrying a weak team, kind of like Kobe had been doing with the Lakers, into the playoffs and carrying them as far as he could. And this is obviously after Shaq had left and before LeBron gets there, so it's kind of this gap where he really is taking on an even larger burden than he had before, even though obviously he was a high usage player before this. But
right.
Sort of interesting. Yeah, we have. Tony Parker gets the first of his career against the Timberwolves, 55, 7, and 10 assists for there. Brandon Roy with Jamal Crawford on the board again, now a Golden State Warrior against the Charlotte franchise. Kobe Bryant, the game that we did a podcast about, 61 against the Knicks. And LeBron has 2 in February of 2009, including a 52, 9, and 11, so just barely missing that triple-double. This was against the Knicks as well, so the Knicks... I didn't realize this. The Knicks gave up 2 50-plus point performances in back-to-back games, or in 3 days of each other. So, yeah.
The Knicks.
You're facing Kobe and LeBron, so...
to be fair, it's not like... but it's still the Knicks, so it's kind of fun to laugh at. So
yeah. Wade... and against Orlando, February 22nd, LeBron on March 13th. Then Wade follows the next day on March 14th. Kevin Martins comes against the Warriors when he's playing for the Kings. And then Wade, another one against the Knicks. The Knicks gave up 3 this season to the key guys this year, Kobe, LeBron, and Wade. So they were well represented. And then in the playoffs, a classic performance we talked a little bit about against in a classic series, the Celtics against the Ascendant Bulls, and Allen has 51 points in that game. So quite a performance there.
Absolutely, yeah, I know, it's good stuff.
Yeah. And then it's interesting because we're getting into a period where there are relatively few of these for the next few seasons. There are 3 in the 2010 season. All 3 are new players: Brandon Jennings, Carmelo Anthony, and Andre Miller. Jennings becomes the youngest player in NBA history to accomplish this feat. I think only in his 5th game, and we talked about that in a previous episode. Carmelo, interested a little bit later in his career than I kind of would expected for him to cross this threshold. He's still playing with the Nuggets at this point. And then Andre Miller becomes sets a record for the oldest to score 50-plus for the first time in his career. He was, at this point, 33 years, 317 days. The other players who have reached that mark after age 30, LaMarcus Aldridge did in 2019. Clifford Robinson, as we talked about before. John Havlicek did so in the playoffs. Sam Jones did it in 1966. Zemo Beatty in 72. Chet Walker also in 72. Gail Goodrich in 75. Alex English in 85. Allen Houston in 2003. Ray Allen in 2007. Damon Stoudemire in 2005. Lou Williams did in 2018. Charles Barkley in 1994. Mike Newlin after age 30, 1980. Dolph Schayes in 59. Tom Chambers in 1990. Cliff Hagan in 62. And Derrick Rose in 2019. So, And yes, and no one has gotten 50 plus in after age 40, but there are a few who have gotten close.
Yeah, pretty close. I mean, it's kind of tough to imagine any 40-year-old getting 50, but it could happen. And then probably in this age of the NBA, you could see guys now that people the health is so important, nutrition so important. Like I could see someone like LeBron maybe finding their way into a 50-point game when they were 40. But yeah, no one yet. A few people pretty close though. We talked about Jordan. You laugh at the Wizards years, but 3 times he got pretty close. He got 43 points on February 21st, 2003 versus the Nets. He had 39 points against the Knicks. Of course, everyone's feasting on the Knicks here in this era. 3-9 2003 for him. And then 227 in 2003 versus the Rockets, 35 points for Jordan there. And in fact, it was kind of interesting. Only 2 players ever have had 30 plus. At age 40. Jordan did it 4 times, the 3 we mentioned, and then 1 other time. And then Dirk Nowitzki actually did it last year, April 9th, 2019, 30 points, right on the money there, right over the threshold there. But yeah, not a lot of 40-year-olds with giant scoring outputs, but I'll be interested to see if that changes over the next few years.
Yeah, well, now that Jamal Crawford broke after 39, we're getting close.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So 2011, no new players in the club. We have LeBron and Carmelo doing so. LeBron for the first time for the Heat, 51, 11, and 8. I'm surprised at how many almost triple-doubles he... I guess I'm not surprised, but it's interesting to see how many almost triple-doubles he had during this time. And then Carmelo with 50 and 11 for the Nuggets. This was the most recent 50 in Nuggets franchise history. And then moving on to 2012, we have 3 total, and all 3 are new to the club. Kevin Durant with the first 50 in his career and the first in Oklahoma City history. Of course, the Sonics had them before that. And Deron Williams now playing for the Nets, 57 points, 6 rebounds, 7 assists. And Kevin Love, the first in Timberwolves history, 51 points, 14 rebounds, and he becomes the 4th Kevin with 50-plus points in his career. Durant being the 3rd earlier this season, and also McHale and Kevin Martin doing so. So many of the Kevins were recent Kevins. So,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Kevin must be, a relatively newer name, I suppose.
I guess, yeah. Yes. Then 2013, we also have 3 again. Durant gets on the board again there, and then a name we talk about quite a bit here. Steph Curry becomes the 140th player to cross 50. He has 54 points, 6 rebounds, 7 assists, 11 of 13 3-point shooting, which is certainly going to help you there. 86 true shooting. Carmelo with a 50-point game, his first with the Knicks, 84 true shooting, and then Durant still with the Thunder, 54, 4, and 6 with 80% true shooting. So very efficient performances during the the Durant one is in the 2014 season, but the others are in the 2013 season. Durant's 2013 not quite as efficient, only 64% true shooting. So.
Yeah, we got different times for sure. It's the people are now aware of what shots are good and what shots are bad. So yeah, things are going to get a little less crazy, but maybe the scoring won't be a little less crazy. But yeah, the days of Allen Iverson and Kobe, well, maybe not. We'll get to the Kobe one in a bit, but for the most part, the days of Iverson and Kobe just putting up 50 shots a game and getting their 50 is over. But I don't know. Maybe Kobe has one more thing to say, one last breath, maybe to come.
Maybe yes. So going back to 2014, we already talked about Kevin Durant's big performance. Carmelo Anthony with the last of his career, 62 points. Against the Charlotte franchise. Charlotte gets they get a lot.
They do, yeah. They kind of stink, so it makes sense. Yeah.
The last 50 of his career, career high, only had 4 in his career. I'm presumably not going to have another one. I'm guessing. The most recent 50 for the Knicks. And 13 rebounds in this game. Terrence Ross, of course, one of the unlikely ones for the Raptors against the Clippers. LeBron with 61 against the Charlotte franchise, his career high so far. Also the most recent 50 for the Heat, and also joins the 10-plus club. We'll get to the players with the most toward the end of the show. And then rounding it out, Kevin Durant has another performance, 51 and 12.7 rebounds. And then one of our most highly unlikely, Corey Brewer, 51 points and 6 steals as well against the Rockets.
I love this one because it's like, I mean, we all, I mean, most people listening to this have seen a lot of Corey Brewer's career, and it's like, no, what, really? Like, even on a good night, I can't imagine Corey Brewer getting 50, but man, I remember seeing it, like, remember the scroll happening where it's like, Corey Brewer 50 points. I'm like, no, well, hold on a minute, what? And it was a fun performance, though. It led to, there's been a few years of, like, the Timberwolves, we talked about that when we talked about the most unlikely 50-point scores. The Wolves have had a lot of these weird ones where, over the last handful of years, where you're like, really? Like, that guy? Like, we'll talk, there's another one coming up here, or you know, the Derrick Rose one, we'll talk about it here in a bit too, where it's just like very unlikely guys getting 50 points at weird parts of their career, and Corey Brewer no exception here.
So 2015 season, we have a lot of new guys to the club, beginning with Mo Williams.
Another weird Timberwolf.
Yeah, with the Timberwolves, January 2015. Klay Thompson gets his first with the Warriors. And 88 true shooting in that game. He shot 11-15 from three. Kyrie Irving with 55 against the Trailblazers. 11 of 19 from three in that game. The first of his career. Steph Curry, the second of his career. 51 points against the Mavericks. 10 of 16 from 3-point. Irving with 57 against the San Antonio Spurs. I remember that game. That was a pretty fantastic performance there.
Yeah.
Was 7 of 7 from 3, 10 of 10 from the line, 20 of 32 from the field overall. Quite a exceptional game there. And James Harden with the first of his career for the Houston Rockets, 50 and 10 rebounds. Harden then does it again just a couple weeks later, April 1st of 2015 against the Kings. 50 points, 8 rebounds, 6 assists, and 3 steals on 83 true shooting. And a guy who doesn't care much about true shooting, we're going to find out, Russell Westbrook with the first of his career. 54 points, 9 rebounds, 8 assists, a near triple-double against the Pacers in a loss. 56 true shooting, which is fine for an individual game, but, I mean, it's fine there, but very, very low on the on what is usually on a 50-plus point game. So. Yeah,
absolutely, yeah. But that's true shooting is only a suggestion for Russell Westbrook, and there's no point to So,
that's fine. Yeah. No, it's not a criticism. Just pointing out.
No, I wouldn't have it any other way. I like the way we get it. So
yes, and the 2016 season, we get Steph Curry is another one on the board. This time against the Pelicans, 8 of 14 from three. James Harden with 59 and 8. So we're getting close to that triple double. We're gonna get there. We're gonna get to the 50-point game triple double again. It hasn't happened since 1975 at this point. Jimmy Butler gets the first of his career, 53 and 10 and 6. He is playing for the Bulls at this point against the Sixers, not his future team, of course. One of his probably many future teams, it looks like, in his career. Kemba Walker with the first in his career, the first for the at least first for the current Hornets franchise, and first for the team in Charlotte. Let's just say that. First in Charlotte history, 52, 9, and 8 against the Jazz. DeMarcus Cousins next in January 2016, 56 points, 12 rebounds. Becomes the 150th player to cross the 50-point threshold. Also fouled out in this game. This was a loss against the Charlotte team. So Charlotte keeps giving them up, but at least they're winning a fair share of those.
Sometimes,
yeah. Steph Curry again, 51 and 7, 11 of 15 from 3. You see the theme with Steph's here. He gets hot from 3, which of course, he's always pretty hot from 3. And he crosses this threshold when he does so. And then Damian Lillard gets there for the first time in his career for the Trailblazers against the Warriors. In fact, the Blazers win this game. This is now we should say, of course, this is the 2016 Warriors that win 73 games that are incredibly dominant. Of course, doesn't go well for them in the finals, but before then, they're absolutely just thrashing teams, doing awesome stuff. So the fact that Lillard had this game, 7 assists, 6 steals, 82 true shooting. 9 of 12 from 3, obviously maybe extra impressive given the team that he's playing in this game.
Sure.
2 days later, Anthony Davis, 59 and 20. The most rebounds in a 50-plus point game since 2001, which Chris Webber did for the Pelicans. I believe this is his first time for the actual Pelicans as opposed to the pre-Pelicans.
Yes, I think that'd be correct.
Yes. And then Steph Curry again with 51 points, 92 true shooting in this game. He was 20 of 27 from the field, 10 of 15 from 3-point, and 7 rebounds, 8 assists in this game as well. And then Dame Lillard does it again, another 50-point game against the Raptors in a loss. And then we get to what you alluded to before, Kobe Bryant.
Oh, yes, this famous game. I remember watching this. This was a few days before my wedding, and then you and we got married pretty close to each other in this year, if I remember correctly as well. So I remember this day. It was like an awesome. It was like one of the first days all my friends came because I got married, outside of Chicago at kind of a destination wedding, and we rented this giant house or whatever. And I remember that was the first day everybody started to come, and we all kind of gathered around and we watched the Warriors win their 73, and we're like, that was awesome. Okay, let's go see what's going on in Kobe Bryant's last game. And it's like, oh my God, he's just shooting every time he's touching the ball. Everybody wants him to shoot. The crowd's going nuts. It was like the perfect way to cap off Kobe Bryant's career. It was like, it was kind of ridiculous, or not even kind of ridiculous. It was very ridiculous. It was just like, oh Jesus, what is he doing? And it's like the Jazz knew it was coming and they couldn't stop it. Like it was just, this is the perfect way to end Kobe's career. But yeah, he just goes off for an unbelievable all-time great performance by Kobe Bryant in his final game, final breath of Kobe Bryant. But of course, gets the 60 points, oldest to score 60, second oldest for 50, 26 50-point game of his career. Of course, the final game of his career, he is 22 of 50 from the field. Just insane performance. 6 of 21 from 3. But I mean, is there any better way to cap off the career of Kobe Bryant than this?
Yeah, probably not. Yeah, and I believe he's actually the third oldest now for 50 since Jamal Crawford.
Oh, of course. That damn Jamal Crawford. Yeah, he gets us.
Yeah. Hey, let's not say anything bad about Jamal Crawford. No. Yeah, obviously incredible. Yeah, and I saw his third to last game against the Pelicans during my honeymoon for my wedding during that time. He did not have as good of a game there, unfortunately. I was hoping to see a classic Kobe game, but it didn't quite work out. He took a lot of shots in that game, don't get me wrong, but didn't make so many. But hey, incredible last performance, obviously.
Yeah, sure.
So also notable that the most 60-point games in NBA, ABA history, regular and postseason, Wilt Chamberlain had 32 of them, including 6 over 70 points. Kobe Bryant second on the list with 6. Jordan had 5. Baylor had 4. James Harden has had 3 so far. And then 25 other players have done it one time. So Kobe with this final game is second on the list by himself all time in 60 plus point games. Going to the 2017 season, Anthony Davis begins the year 50 points, 15 rebounds, 5 assists, 5 steals, and 4 blocks, coming the closest that anyone has ever come to recording a 50.5 times 5 game, just 1 block away from that. So that's pretty incredible.
No, definitely. Yeah, that's a great performance. But yeah, like you said, we're still trying to kind of look for some of these kind of stand out. Like now that 50-point games, and of course in the next few years, you're going to see that the 50-point game not as super interesting now. But now it's like, okay, who can also match a 50-point game with another like collection of stats and weird numbers or whatnot? And this one's definitely it's close. It's right up there. But they're coming. They're coming in the next few years, I think, for sure.
Yes, I should mention for the previous Anthony Davis 50-20 game in the 2016 season that he joined a short list of players who have accomplished that, including Chamberlain, Baylor, McAdoo, Elvin Hayes, Bob Pettit, Moses Malone, George Mikan, Shaq, Dolph Shays, Chris Webber, George Yardley, as well as George McGinnis, Mel Daniels, Julius Erving, and Marvin Barnes in the ABA, and only Wilt, Mikan, Shaq, and Baylor have 60-20 games in their career, and Davis only came 1 point away from doing so. So that's obviously quite impressive. Going back to 2017, finally, Russell Westbrook breaks the barrier. He becomes the first player since 75 with a 50-point triple-double, 51 points, 13 rebounds, 10 assists. 48% true shooting is the first true shooting percentage below 50% in a 50-plus point game since 1967. I believe it was Rick Barry, our old friend, who did that. So very, very impressive, despite, obviously, the true shooting, not 17 of 44 from the floor, not the best, but still an incredible accomplishment. This came in a win against the Suns, so finally broke through, and then we're going to get a bunch of these going on over the next season or so.
Absolutely, yeah, and true shooting be damned. Westbrook's going to get his numbers, get his points, but yeah, we finally have those 50-point triple doubles, and like you said, there's going to be a few coming up here a little bit, and they're happening a little bit more frequently than they were for the other 40 years in NBA history, but it doesn't make them not cool. Still, I still enjoy a good old 50-point triple double. So
absolutely, yes. Klay Thompson, 60 points on December 5th, 2016. The fewest minutes played in a 60-plus point game. He played 29 minutes. John Wall with 52 points becomes the fifth John to score 50-plus in a game, joining John Drew, John Williamson, John Havlicek, and John Brisker. That is the most common name to accomplish this. Not, I guess, a surprise. John is a famous name. The Wizards lost this game to the Magic, however. So, DeMarcus Cousins with 55 and 14. He's still playing with the Kings at this point in his career. Isaiah Thomas joins the club with 52 points. This is at this point playing for the Celtics. James Harden with 53, 16, and 17. This was December 31st of 2016. This was one day after Isaiah Thomas's big game. Breaks the record for most assists in a 50-plus point game, triple-double. I remember watching this game live, and this was a pretty incredible performance against the Knicks.
Absolutely, yeah. Good one.
Jimmy Butler, on January 2nd, 2017, still playing for the Bulls. James Harden, again, 51, 13, and 13, so another triple-double. Also joins the 5-plus club for 50-point games. Russell Westbrook, not a triple-double, but 58 points in a game against the Blazers. Devin Booker scores 70 against the Boston Celtics. This is the first 70-plus game since Kobe's 81 in 2006. Only the sixth player in history to have 70-plus in a game. And then he is the youngest by 3 years to David Thompson do so. He was only 20 years old, 145 days at this point. So it's pretty incredible there.
Yeah, and it's also should be noted as well. They lost by 10 in this game, yes, which we don't have the numbers there, but I can imagine that's got to be one of the worst losses in a game where somebody scores 50 plus, let alone one guy having 70 and still losing by 10. Which if nothing encapsulates the late 2010 Phoenix Suns, like Devin Booker scoring 70 in a 10-point loss, nothing will. So.
Still a pretty incredible performance, but that one definitely. There were some purists were not happy.
No, that's one. There were some soiled diapers that day for sure. On sure. And many beat reporters and newsrooms and Twitter accounts were very unhappy about that.
They're very unhappy. Yes. Westbrook with another triple double, 57, 13, and 11. Damian Lillard, 59 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists in April of 2017. Russell Westbrook again, 50, 16, and 10, joining the 5-plus club. And then some playoff performances. Westbrook again, 51, 10, and 13 in a loss against the Rockets. This was the 38th in playoff history, and this was Westbrook's fourth 50-plus point triple-double in the season. He and Harden combined for 6 in that season, and previously before that there had been only 7 ever in NBA history. So they combined nearly double that in just one season. So pretty impressive. And then to end the season, Isaiah Thomas, 53 points in a Boston win over the Wizards. So a lot in that season.
Yeah, and it's not slowing down, unfortunately. It's gonna be a lot these next 2 seasons too. But yeah, there's a lot in that year, and some fun names and whatnot. We're now getting into kind of the modern history, so there's a lot of things that I know everybody listening to this, or for the most part of listening to this, has watched or lived through or whatnot. But it's not gonna slow down, unfortunately, or fortunately. It depends on your take on 50-point games. I like them. Yeah. I am pro 50-point games. So
yeah, they're fun. So. Yes. So 2018, LeBron James begins joining Rick Barry as the only player with 50-plus in two separate stints with the team. Barry having done so with two separate stints with the Warriors, LeBron with the Cavs, 57, 11, and 7. James Harden, 56 and 13 assists with a 92 true shooting percentage in November of 2017. Bradley Beal with the not the first of his career, but a 51, 3, and 2. That wasn't the first of his career? I think it might actually be the first of his career. I don't think I have that on the list here. But yes, I believe the first of his career. James Harden has two within, I think, back-to-back games in December of 2017, 51 points in each. DeMar DeRozan with the first of his career for the Raptors, 52, 5, and 8. Lou Williams off the bench. I believe this is only the second time that has happened. No, I take that back. I think Lou Williams actually started this game because I believe that there are only two off of the bench, and I don't think this is one of them. I think
your Nick Anderson one for sure.
Yeah, it's Nick Anderson and then Crawford recently. Let's check the box score here, but. Yes, Lou Williams started this game. So,
okay, there you go. So we got a rare start for Lou. So okay, all right, we can strike him from the record, but
strike from
that all the records. Just that
right.
record. So.
Well, still still impressive performance. James Harden, 60, 10, and 11 with four.
That's a
with four
good
steals.
Night.
Yes,
good night.
Sets the record for most points in triple-double. This was against the Orlando Magic. C.J. McCollum with the first 50 of his career. Damian Lillard with another 50 there. So the Trailblazers have two within a couple weeks. Kevin Durant with the Warriors, his first, I believe, with the Warriors, joining the 5+ club. Anthony Davis with another impressive stat line, 53 points, 18 rebounds, 3 assists, and 5 blocks against the Suns. I don't know if it counts because it's against the Suns. And then LeBron James, the 40th 50 in playoff history, 6th in the NBA Finals, the 51, 8, and 8. This is the J.R. Smith game where at the end he inexplicably screwed up in the final in the final moments. I'm trying to remember the. I'm of course there's the famous. There's the famous photo of LeBron with his arms out, just incredulous at what JR is doing. I'm blanking exactly on the particulars now at the moment. JR, was it him not taking the shot, or did he take the shot too early?
So exactly. I forget exactly now what happened, but I think essentially it was like he didn't know what the score was. He thought they were up. And right. I forget. I think it was George Hill. George Hill. I'm trying to remember who. Yeah, I think it was George Hill. Missed the free throw. J.R. Smith gets the rebound and just runs, and everyone's like, "No, it's tied." Right. And then they go to overtime, and then of course,
that's right. That
does not work well. So, it's 4.7 seconds. He's the smartest guy in the room. Gets the rebound, just runs away, and everyone's just like, "Oh god!" And eventually passes it. I think maybe in the last, but it did a little too late. So thought he was up by 1. They were not. They were tied. So not great.
Yes. So, 2019, Blake Griffin becomes the 160th player to cross 50. And then we get another performance, another back-to-back by Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. Klay Thompson, he has 52 in only 27 minutes. So becomes the player with the fewest minutes played in a 50-plus point game and also a 60-plus point game. He has both records in his career. And he was 14 of 24, which is the most three-pointers. Really in any game. He broke that record. So yes, that is, of course, very impressive. Derrick Rose gets the first 50 of his career playing with the Timberwolves. Kemba Walker gets a 60-point game for the Hornets. LeBron gets his first with the Lakers and joins, joined Wilt Chamberlain, Rick Barry, Moses Malone, Bernard King, and Jamal Crawford as the only players with 50 with 3 teams. And at the time joined Barry as the only players with 50 in 4 separate tenures with different teams. So he had it with the Cavs, the Heat, the Cavs again, and then the Lakers. It was 4 separate stints. Of course, Crawford later on becomes the first with the 4 separate franchises, which we'll get to in a minute. James Harden with, I guess technically triple-double because it was 54 points, 13 assists, and 11 turnovers. tying the record for most turnovers recorded in a 50-plus point game, and was the 10th 50-plus of his career.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's a lot of big gaudy numbers coming up here, and yeah, it's just the 50-point games are rolling in, man.
Yes. Durant gets on the board with another performance. Harden with a true triple-double against the Lakers. LaMarcus Aldridge gets on the board with his first of his career at age 33 for the Spurs. And then Harden has a bunch in a row. April 14th, 57 points. April 16th, 58 points. 10 rebounds in that game, 9 rebounds in the previous one. On January 23rd, 61 points, 15 rebounds, 4 assists, 5 steals. And then a month later, on February 28th, 58 points, 7 rebounds, 10 assists, becomes the 6th player in history with 15 or more 50-plus point games. We'll get to the totals in just a little bit. Damian Lillard, also 51 points, becoming the 22nd player with 5 or more in his career. Giannis Antetokounmpo, in what turns out to be his MVP season, gets the first of his career 52 points, 16 rebounds, 7 assists. And Harden has 57 and 61 in back-to-back games. Devin Booker, 59 and 50 in back-to-back games. This is all happening in March of, basically a week in March of 2019.
You'll be stunned to know both of them were losses, too, but that's all right. Hey.
oh, that's right.
Can't win them all.
Losses. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, actually, there's a bunch in a row because Lillard, Giannis, and Harden are all losses in a row. There are actually quite a few losses in this season with 50-point games, interestingly enough. Harden, 50, 11, and 10. His 5th career 50-point triple-double and 18th of his career all-time. And then Jamal Crawford, April 9th, 2019, becomes the oldest player ever at age 39 and 20 days with a 50-plus point games. This is his first with 4 separate franchises. Did so with the Suns. The second ever 50 off the bench. And also, this is Dirk Nowitzki's final home game. And this was a loss against the Dallas Mavericks. And he did have 5 rebounds, 5 assists in this game. So he's putting up, not just scoring, he's putting up numbers all over.
Absolutely. So. And he's our hope now. I mean, Jamal is our hope now because he's going to turn 40 in this next year. He is our hope for our first 40-year-old 50-point game. We're hoping for it, Jamal. Come on, man. You got to do it. For you. We know you can do it. We know you got it. It's just
and hopefully he's on a different team so he can do it with 5 different franchises.
That too. Yeah. Again, just another little thing that we need from you. But it can't be too good of a team, though. It needs to be kind of a crappy team that allows, because it's got to be a team that needs Jamal Crawford to score 50 in a game. So I, not the Suns, somewhere else, but yeah, that's it. Just, that's all we're asking.
Yeah. Well, that's all we're asking. And then closing it out, in the playoffs, Damian Lillard, with, one of the great games of all time, 50 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists. One of the great moments with hitting that clutch shot against the Thunder in that series. And then Kevin Durant, I think helping close down the Clippers with 50 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists for the Golden State Warriors. Of course, Durant's postseason would become more infamous when he, of course, suffers the terrible Achilles injury in the finals and is lost probably for the entire season. But had some great moments during that season as well, and of course a pretty incredible performance in that game early on in the playoffs against the Clippers. So
absolutely, yeah, it's a shame that's kind of how it ends. But yeah, that's it. So those are 50-point games, all of them.
Yes. So notably,
so now we're gonna go over every other one in history.
Yes.
So strap in.
Yes. So notably, there were 24 50-point games in the 2019 season, the most since 1963 when there were 34. It's the 3rd highest total ever, behind, of course, only 62 and 63, where there were the huge scoring bursts. And 2007 had 18, 1972 had 19, so that really blew by that. The last 4 seasons are the most 50-plus point games of any 4-year stretch since 63 through 66. There were 9 this season for James Harden, including back-to-back games in March. And yeah, that's pretty much that tells the tale right there. That there's some pretty incredible numbers for the 2019 and for the last 4 seasons in general have been kind of a huge scoring burst that's really been unseen for this extended amount of time, at least since the 60s, and obviously doesn't reach quite those levels. But outside of that, we're having some pretty unique territory in NBA history.
Absolutely, and it's a big reason why we're doing the series is because in the midst of the year, I think we decided on doing this series pretty early on. I think in October when there was 5 50-point games even in October, we were like, okay, maybe this is something we need to kind of look at a little bit. And then obviously Harden in January, putting up 4 of those, and just like at that point in the season, we had seen and noticed that okay, this is really exploding. This is something we probably should talk about. So I don't think it's slowing down anytime soon. So we'll see how the next year goes, but it's fascinating nonetheless. And there's going to be some interesting wrinkles that come up in the next few years. But like you said, you never know. I mean, there were years where it felt like, oh man, this is never going to end, and then it just ends, and then there's just not a lot for a few years. So we'll see. Likely, it's probably not going to tail off, but we'll see. We don't know.
Yeah, well, I don't know if Harden's going to keep up quite the level that he's kept up, recently. I mean, the big bursts have obviously Kobe drove it in 06, 07, and Harden has driven a lot of it in the last 3 years. Although obviously Westbrook and other players have, it's not just been Harden, but he's obviously had a lot of it. So yeah, that's definitely big. So speaking of Harden, he is now tied for 6th all-time on the most 50-plus point games list. Chamberlain is first with 122. Jordan has 39. Bryant has 26. Barry has 22. Iverson is 14. LeBron has 13. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar has 10. So that is the list. Other notable ones, Kevin Durant has 7. Steph Curry has 6, Westbrook has 6, and Damian Lillard has 6. So of the active players who have a chance to move up the leaderboard, those are the guys who might have a chance to get to double digits at some point.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone's catching 122, but got a little bit of work to do for some of these guys. But still, moving out the leaderboard, it might be like Cy Young in baseball, where you just kind of sometimes strike some of his records out because it's so ridiculous. You might have to just kind of like put an X through Chamberlain and just be like, all right, look, no one's catching Chamberlain, but 39 on Jordan, he's number 2. There's a real possibility some of these guys could maybe compete for that 39, but 122, I don't think that's happening. So.
No, probably not. Yeah, so. Yes, and you compiled a few other interesting numbers.
Yeah, so some fun, we'd been looking at franchises a little bit, so I wanted to just touch on that a little bit. 50 by franchise, this is as of this season. The Warriors, of course, 148, largely helped by, of course, Will Chamberlain. But they've done some of their, Klay Thompson and Steph Curry have kind of added those numbers too, so we need to give them some credit. Number 2, the Lakers at 63, the Bulls at 42, the Nationals, Sixers at 30, the Rockets at 26, the Hawks at 21, Jazz and Knicks at 16, Sonics Thunder at 15, rounding out kind of our top there. I think what's interesting too is we look at kind of the bottom of the numbers too. The Grizzlies still 0. Poor Grizzlies. But there's some other ones too that are just kind of surprisingly low. The Mavericks only at 5. You'd think they maybe have had a few more than that. The Timberwolves only at 5 as well. The shared Pelicans franchise at 4. The Raptors at 4. The Cougars/Spirits only at 3. I don't think they're going to add to that anytime soon. The Hornets only at 2. The Stars at 2. The Conquistadors at 1. The Pros at 1. Again, these are ABA franchises, so that's it. But unfortunately, Memphis, between the Pros and the Grizzlies, not a lot of 50-point games going scored for the Memphis franchises, unfortunately. But do some other more fun with numbers too. So these are the months with the most 50-plus games. January has the most at 116, February 102, March 102, December 97, November 73, April 60, October 21, May 12. June 2nd, June 2 there. Any numbers there surprise you, or January and February and March as the tops kind of seems like it would make the most sense. January at 116, though, not even really kind of close for February and March. Yeah,
I guess maybe December is so much lower. I guess there are maybe fewer games a little bit because of the holidays, but yeah, the other months kind of make sense because the NBA calendar shifted somewhat over the years. So some of those months didn't have as many games as they do now. But that is pretty interesting.
All right, so now the dates with the most 50-plus point games. I know you guys are all pining for this. The 18th, that's a day when people have scored 29, the most ever 50-plus point games. The 16th has 27. The 14th has 26. The 23rd has 25. The 20th has 23. We'll go to the bottom of the list, so I think this is pretty interesting. of course, 31, is only going to have 10, and that makes sense. Not every month has 31 days, so it makes sense. But the 24th, only 13 for the 24th. I don't know what it is about the 24th, but it shouldn't be that low, right? Like, that's just a normal day. I mean, the 24th of every month happens every single month, and only 13 there. The 8th, only 14 as well. So the 30th is also at 14, but 30th and 31, those make sense. But the 8th and the 24th, 14 and 13 respectively, I found out pretty interesting. But so now we're going to get real wild here. Days of the week, the most likely 50-point games being scored in the days of the week, probably relates to when it's more likely that an NBA game is going to happen, but hey, whatever, we're going to have some fun with it anyway. Friday, 115 50-point games on a Friday. Saturday is second with 104. Wednesday at 97. Sunday at 86. Tuesday at 84. Thursday at 61. And Mondays, a case of the Mondays for everybody, 37. Only on Mondays, so not many on Mondays. But, I'm not motivated on Mondays either, so I get it.
All the NBA's a Garfield on Monday. Yeah, that's tough. Yeah.
So I told you Friday was the most likely day for a 50-point game. I told you January was the most likely month, or the month that had the most 50-point games, and I told you the 18th had the most 50-point games. So our most prominent day, month, and date is Friday, January 18th. So I know what you're asking, Jason. How many 50-point games happened on a Friday, January 18th? And I can tell you just one happened. Kevin Durant scored 52 points on Friday, January 18th in 2013. So we've officially found the most perfect 50-point game of all time is Kevin Durant's 52 on Friday, January 18th, 2013. So.
Well, that is amazing research, Rich.
I was bored. I was very, very bored.
All right. Well, that's good. That's a date that will live in NBA infamy.
Hang a banner for that one. But
yeah. I don't know if Thunder will be doing that, but they should.
They should retroactively now. They should.
Right. So. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, Rich, this has been a fun series. Thanks for going through it with me, and for all the great stuff you did to dig through this and find some stuff out. Hopefully our listeners have enjoyed what they've been hearing, and if you have, you should definitely give us a rating and review on iTunes or Stitcher where you listen to our podcast, and of course share it with other people, let them know what we're doing. Word of mouth is always good. If you want to give us any feedback, we're on Facebook and Twitter at Over and Back NBA. And we appreciate any feedback you can give us. So thanks again for listening, and we're back again soon.